So I wanted to ask a question, another question. One of the phrases I think that we hear a lot is that we're living in unprecedented times. And I think for myself, and I think for everyone else, like none of us can remember a time that anything was like this, right? But what I wanted to ask from a Torah perspective, from a Judaism perspective, are we really, or is it really unprecedented times, or is there a kind of a model? Is there something that's happened before in history that's kind of sets a precedent for it? And the reason why I think the question is relevant, because if there is, then it can help us with our mindset of how we're going to get through the next few weeks, or however long it's going to be, and how we're not going to not just get through it, but how we're going to really thrive during these very, very different and difficult circumstances that we find ourselves in. So does anyone have any thoughts on whether there's any precedent like that in Jewish history?
Gila, I'm sure there's probably loads of incidences in Jewish history in the Torah that are unprecedented, but they're unprecedented in Torah times, and I don't know how much we can relate to those. So even, I don't know, I can't even think of things off the top of my head, but it just feels that, you know, we always look to the Torah and all the stories for guidance and advice, and sometimes, I don't know whether it's not far-fetched, but we've not lived in that moment, so how can we compare it to everyday life? You know, we talk about, even at Shavuos time, when you talk about standing under the mountain and it's the chuppah and that's how it should feel, and you're in a chuppah and getting married, but it's an analogy, it's not reality. And I think you can't compare it like how we feel. I think you can try and take from it incidences and how people may have felt, or the unknown. I mean, even you talk about going out of Egypt, you know, in the darkness, and they didn't know what was happening, and some didn't go with them, and should they take the bread with them, and should they take the matzah with them and carry it on their backs, and they were following Moses, and who was he, and you know, he was taking them out of Egypt, but where were they going? I mean, it's almost that, it's like unknown. They didn't know where they were going, they were just told, this guy says, come on, let's go, we're leaving Egypt and we're gonna go to a better place, and then they're wandering through the desert, and all those things were unknown and probably unprecedented for them at that time. I don't know, I'm just...
No, I think you're raising a very good point, and I think you look, it's unprecedented. I do not remember a time ever like where you're faced with being quarantined, where you're, you know, we live in the 21st century, like whoever thinks about, you know, will I have enough toilet paper or stuff, right? And we're living in a time where there's a lot of new worries, right? So you're right, and when you look at, but what's the if I'm hearing Deborah's question correctly, I think the question is, what's the point in looking at a story? Because it was different. And the point of looking at it is because, and you, Deborah, you said that in your answer a little bit, is that it's not because we look at it and we say, that's whatever, but we look at it and we sort of say, oh, right, there's something that I can take with it. For example, if let's say, you know, you're going through something, and it can be something small and something minor, right? And you speak to a friend who's going through something else, there's tremendous value in it, because you can share ideas, you can understand, you know, a lot of how we're going to deal with things over the next, you know, the next one, how we is in our mind, right? Because there's what's happening, but there's also the reaction. Like, for example, the small thing about panic buying, right? What does everyone keep saying? Everyone keeps saying is that there's not a shortage of food or toilet paper or whatever, but what's causing the panic is because people are worried that there will be a shortage, and are therefore they're buying more than they need, right? So again, it's what's showing here, what the point of what I'm trying to say is that it's not just a reality of what's going on, but it's how we look at it, how we think about it, how we view it, which is going to make a tremendous difference to us. And I'll give you another example for what it is, and I'll share my personal situation with you. So I have 7 kids, and we've been in since the stricter guidelines came out, we've been in self-isolation because one of my kids had a cough for like almost 2 weeks. So we're following the guidelines, and we've been in self-isolation. And obviously, imagine that it could be quite a challenging thing to be home and in a, you know, thank God we have a good space, and we're not in a crowded space, but still we're the same people all the time, all the kids all over, right? But there are, it could go 2 ways. It could be terrible, or it could be an opportunity, right? It could be a crisis, or it could, it is a crisis that has to be dealt with. But then that can be either something that we look back, and one of the things that I saw, which I think really is was meaningful to me, was, you know, our kids are going to remember this, right? We're going to remember it. The world is going to remember it. But what they're going to remember is not just what happened, but the world's reaction to it, right? Like, you know, if you think back at crises that have happened in the past, we tell a story about it. And that story is not just what happened, but how people related to it and how people reacted to it. And I think that's where the value comes in looking into what's the root of what's going on. How can I let previous stories that have happened guide how I am going to react to what's going on, and how I'm going to move forward with that? Does that kind of clarify what's the value in what we're going to try and do in the future? If yes, just give a thumbs up, as Sharon told us, or say a pipe in yes if you're happy to keep going further. Everyone?
Yeah, it's great.
Okay, so let's look at again, and basically what we're trying to do, we're trying to find a model for what's happened, not the same thing, but a model that will help us, our mindset, and guide us going forward. So in Kabbalistic literature, they teach us that if you want to understand something, you have to go to the first time it's mentioned, right? So the first time it's mentioned, you may look at it and you may think this has nothing to do with my life, but when you look at it from fresh eyes, you suddenly realize, hold on a second, there's a pattern, there's something going on here, which is very, very relatable to what I'm going through again. And that's what I'm challenge you to do right now, is I'm going to challenge to look at this story that you've probably, sorry?
Noah.
Hold on, no, you've probably heard many times beforehand, but to look at it with fresh eyes and see if there's any similarities between that and what we're going through. Okay, so we're going to go through to the part of where the Jewish people were formed as a Jewish people. Right. So what was that? Is the root of it? Was the ordeal in Egypt. Now, how did it start? Right. So how it started was that the brothers, they made a mistake. Right. They made a mistake about their brother Joseph, and they tried to first kill him, and then they sold him down to Egypt. Now, firstly, we hear the story and we often, like, you know, we think about it, but we don't really like come to grips with it. But let's put ourselves in the situation of the brothers for the moment, right? So the brothers have sold their brother Joseph into slavery. Now they come back to their father Jacob and tell him that their brother was killed by a wild animal. What happens next is Jacob loses his connection with God, right? He no longer is able to have that prophetic insight because he's mourning for his son. And this lasts for 22 years, right? And the brothers know that they are the cause of it, right? They see their father in excruciating pain, right? They must at this point think, you know what? We have destroyed our father, right? Our father was this great prophet. He spoke to God. God spoke to him. He had this incredible connection to God, and it's gone. And who caused it? We did. And they see that even for 22 years, for 22 years, it's not letting up. He's not getting over it. He's not moving on. He's not, his grief is strong. And they know that they have caused all of that, right? So again, this is the pathway, right? Something starts, an ordeal begins, a difficulty begins, and it seems endless, right? Think about it right now. You know, we started this virus. This virus started. You know, it hit the news, and it's and it came to a point, and it seems absolutely endless. We don't know when it's going to go, when life is going to go back to normal. There are, you know, Sharon said earlier that life is never going to go back to normal. And there are certainly people who are suggesting that the world is going to change because of it, right? We do not know when it's going to be, and in the moment, there's the worry and the concern, and it feels absolutely endless. But then what happens, right? So let's go back to Joseph and the brothers and what happens. So they go down to Egypt, and they because there's a famine, and they go just to get some bread, right? So what happens to them is they go get some food, sorry, and Joseph says, they don't know that their tormentor is Joseph, that they can only have their food, but if they bring Benjamin back, right? So you had this tremendous difficulty, and then it felt like, you know, it was going on endless, but then it becomes worse, right? The crisis gets worse. Is that not what we're going through, right? The virus starts. At first, it was like, you know, everyone wash your hands, sing happy birthday, wash your hands, just take precautions. And then it becomes this crisis, right? You know, we're suggesting self-isolation for 14 days. We're suggesting vulnerable people self-isolate for 12 weeks. We're shutting down schools. They're suggesting London's going to be in lockdown, right? Like, what was a difficulty and a fear has suddenly become a crisis, right? Again, it's that model that we see there. It seems to be playing out here as well again, but right? But and then what happens is that they bring, sorry, hold on just a sec. They bring their brother Benjamin down, and it appears that they get their food, and it appears that they're good to go, right? It seems everything seems to be fine, and then what happens is that Joseph sends out his messengers to bring them back, and accuses Benjamin of stealing from him, right? So you have what appears to be an illusion of resolution, an illusion of salvation, and then you have the final crisis, right? Now, what happens is that the brothers all bring back, and Joseph says to them, you know, your brother stole his cup from me, so I am going to I'm going to imprison him, right? So what do the brothers do, especially Yehuda? What does he realize at this point? He realizes that he has two options, and both of them are terrible. Why? What are the two options? The option number one is that he goes back to his father without Benjamin, and he knew that what would happen was that his father would die instantly, right? The grief of losing his second son, Benjamin, would kill him, right? So he knew option one is distraction. The other option is they have to wipe out Egypt. It's also total destruction, right? So he has two options, and both of them are total destruction, right? You know, it looks like what are the choices right now? They're all awful. And what does he do at that point? he steps forward, he faces his tormentor, and he says, he does the right thing, right? He stands up and he says, I am going to stand up for my brother. I'm going to protect my brother. I'm going to keep my word that I said to my father that I would bring him back, and come what may, no matter what. And at that point, what does Joseph do at that point? Anyone knows?
He sent everybody out and then revealed him who he was.
Right. He says, I am Joseph. And that's it. Resolution, salvation. The brothers instantly realize, wow, you know, we are saved, right? So let's just summarize a little bit what we have. So we have a pattern here, right? A pattern where someone makes a mistake, human error. There is an ordeal that comes because of it. The ordeal seems endless. When you're in it, it seems absolutely awful and endless. And then it gets worse, right? The ordeal turns into a crisis. And there may or may not be a moment where you feel like, okay, this is going to be fine, this is resolution. But then it just gets worse, right? And until you're left to the point where you feel like there's no, you know, all the options are terrible, like all the roads are leading to destruction, and then becomes a final resolution. So keep the model in mind, because I want to come back to it and show you some of the depth behind it, behind the model. But meanwhile, I want to bring in two different stories, okay? And so keep Joseph's story in mind. We'll come back to it and find out what's really going on there. But I want to tell you two different stories, okay? And these are both stories that you may have heard before. But let's again look at it with fresh eyes and try to understand what's really going on. So there's a story told of Rabbi Akiva, who was traveling, and he had a candle, a rooster, and a donkey. And he's traveling to a different village, and he wants to stay somewhere overnight. It's getting dark. He goes into the village, and the villagers refuse to put him up. They all say, sorry, we can't do, we have no spare space for you, we can't put you up. What does Rabbi Akiva say? He says, everything that God does is for the good, right? And he says, you know what, I've got no option, no one wants to put me up, I'll go sleep in the forest. He goes, he sets himself up in the forest for the night, and what happens is a wind comes and blows out the candle, and he's now left in the dark, and he says everything that God does is for the good. And then what happens is the rooster drops dead, and he's now left in the forest in the dark without the rooster to wake him up in the morning. And he says everything that God does is for the best. It's for the good, sorry. And the next thing that happens is the horse drops dead. So here he is in the cold forest, dark, no resources, no way to travel. And what is Rabbi Akiva saying at this point? I mean, most of us, what would we say at this point? We would say, no, like, can anything else go wrong, right? This is beyond terrible, right? Like everything that could possibly go wrong went wrong, right? And we see it again, that same pattern of you know, a crisis starts and it looks and it gets worse and it gets worse. And but what does he say? He says everything that happens is for the best. It's for the good. Everything that God does is for the good. And he goes to sleep. Now he wakes up the next morning, goes back into the village, and he sees, and when he goes into the village, he realizes that it's eerily dark and quiet. And he realizes what's happened overnight is that a gang of robbers and villains had come in and they'd wiped the village out. And suddenly he realized what happened. He realized that had any one of the villagers, even one, had said to him, sure, come in, I'll make you a bed, you know, you can spend the night with me, he would have been killed. He would have been amongst one of the fatalities. And then he realizes what happened next. Had he been in the forest with a candle, or the rooster or the donkey, they would have seen or heard him. And they would have come and they would have killed him. And he suddenly realizes how everything that happened was for the good, right? But I think what's incredible about Rabbi Akiva is that not only did he, like, it's sometimes simple, when something happens afterwards, and suddenly, I'll share with you an example. We were traveling, and we were traveling, I think, from Seattle airport to LA, and we had a stopover in San Francisco, and our flight in Seattle was delayed. We were traveling with the kids, and they were overtired and whatever. Eventually, we finally get on the flight with hungry, overtired kids, and we realize we've missed our connecting flight. So we get into San Francisco, we rush across the airport, and I was not like Rabbi Akiva saying everything that God does is for the good. I was stressed. Kids are stressed, and kids are hungry, overtired. Finally, we get into the airport. We get onto the later flight. We get into LA about a few hours, like 2 o'clock in the morning or something, with little kids, and you can imagine they're all falling apart. Parents are falling apart, kids are falling apart, everyone's falling apart, and we realize that our car seats are lost, right? So we can't even just get into our rental car and drive off, because we don't have the car seats and we don't have the luggage and everything. And eventually the rental company managed to find us a few car seats and set us up. By the time we got to our place where we were staying, it was a very, very, very long day. Now what happens, fast forward, is that we spoke to the airline about it, and they said, because of what happened and because of all the difficulties that your family endured, we're going to give you a $200 voucher per person, right? Which basically meant that we coming up, we could all have a somewhere in North America. Hi, Etty. Oh, she's not yet joined. So at that point, when after we got those vouchers, it was very easy for us to say, wow, it was all for the good, right? But I think what's amazing about Rabbi Akiva is that while it was going on, right, while he was sitting while he's being told, no, you can't stay with us, while the candle's blowing out, while this, he's saying everything that God does is for the good. Now, so the question is, where did he learn this from? Where did he have that positivity, that faith, that whatever you want to call it, to every time he had an ordeal, to say this too is from everything that God does is for the good. So you may again have heard of where he's learned it from. His rabbi, his teacher was someone called Nachum Ish Gamzu. Now, how did Nachum Ish Gamzu get his name? Is that the story is that they were living, the Jewish community were living in times where the king was not friendly towards the Jews. The Jewish community came together and they said, what can we do to really bribe the king, right? So that he treats us a little bit better. So they said every person in the Jewish community has to give a certain amount of money. We'll buy a very expensive treasure box of jewels, and we'll give it to the king as a gesture of goodwill, and hopefully the king will soften his approach towards us. And they said, the person that we're electing to go and give it to them is Nachum Ish Gamzu. So Nachum Ish Gamzu, he takes the box and he goes, and the king lives very fast, so he has to stay in overnight. And somehow the innkeeper cottoned on to the fact that that Nachum was holding on to something that was quite precious and expensive. And while he was sleeping, he took that treasure box, he opened it up, he kept all the jewels for himself, and he filled it up with dirt. And Nachum Ish Gamzu wakes up the next morning. He doesn't realize, he doesn't see anything. He's not suspicious at all. So he takes the treasure box, which at this point is filled with dirt, and he goes to the king, and he gets into the king, and he says to the king, I've got a present for you. So the king says, great, and he opens it up, and he sees a box of dirt. And he says to him, are you making fun of me? Like, why are you bringing dirt to me? And Nachmish Gamzu, at this point, he thinks to himself, Gamzu de Tova, this too is for the good. And what happens is that one of the king's advisors, who was, Hashem obviously made a miracle, God made a miracle, and tells the kings, no, this is not just any dirt. This is like the dirt that Abraham used to destroy his enemies. That if you take this dirt and you throw it at your enemies, it will destroy the enemies. So the kings was a bit suspicious. I mean, you can imagine if someone comes and says, "Oh, this is not just any dirt. This is special dirt." You may be a little bit suspicious. He says, "You know what? I'm going to try out, because we have a neighboring enemy country that we have not been able to get rid of. We're going to use it. If it works, great. If not, oh boy, are you guys in trouble." So Nachmish Gamzu is thinking to himself, Gamzu de Tova, this too is for the good, this too is for the good. And what happens is they test it out. They take the handful of dirt, they throw it at the enemies, and lo and behold, it works. And the king the king is amazed that he's finally able to destroy these enemies that have been bothering him for so many years. And obviously we understand that for a king, that's much more precious than a box of jewels, right? Jewels he has, but the ability to use those weapons to destroy his enemies is a much greater present. And he rewards Nachum. He sends him back with a treasure house, with a treasure full of the Jewish people, and he's obviously going to be very, very kind to the Jewish people from that point on. Again, so what do we see here is that Nachum Ish Gamzu, while it was going on, he didn't wait to see the resolution. While it was going on, he says, Gamzu Letova, this too is for the good. Now there's a slight difference between what Nachum said and what Rabbi Akiva said. Okay, so I'm gonna see if you I want you to see if you can figure out what the slight difference is, because it's a very nuanced difference, but we're going to see that it's actually a very, very important difference. And Nachum says, Gam zu letova, this too is for the good. This too is good. And what does Rabbi Akiva say? He says, everything that God does is for the good. Kol man Ovid Rachmana le'tav Ovid. Everything that God does is for the good. Why? What's the difference? Can you figure out what's the difference between what Rabbi Akiva is saying and what Nachum is saying? They sound very similar, but what is the actual difference? Any ideas?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi,
Hi.
Hadass.
Hi. Maybe one saying whatever comes my way, it's good, and the other one is saying that everything is good, even if it looks bad.
Okay, so which one would you say is which?
The one that says this too is for the good is like whatever. Okay, so it's come my way, and I'm gonna get over it, and it's obviously for the good. And then the other one that says that everything that Hashem gives me is for the good is basically everything in the world is good, even even the bad things that we say are bad is good. I think maybe, I don't know if I'm saying the same thing.
There is a difference in you have spotted the difference. Let's see if anyone else has any other ideas. Oh, thank you, Adassa, that was a good one. Any?
Sorry, Gila, can you just repeat what the question was again?
Yes, for sure. So I'm saying Rabbi Akiva says everything that God does is for the good, right? And he actually says that's what we're supposed to be saying. We're supposed to be saying everything that a person does is for the good. He was a student of Nachum who said, Gamzu Letova, this too is for the good. So I'm saying, and the reason why I'm asking this question is because in Jewish law, if a student learns something from their teacher, from their rabbi, they're supposed to repeat it as the rabbi taught it to him. So why is Rabbi Akiva changing the language? Why is he saying Gam zu l'tova, this too is for the good? Why is he not saying this too is for the good? Why is he changing it and saying everything that God does is for the good? And again, the difference is very subtle and nuanced, but I think it's something that we can relate to.
Is it to show the world that, or to show everybody that it doesn't matter what, if it's good, if it's bad, it's from Hashem, so it's not, there's no bad. It's
Okay, so which one would be that there's no bad?
Forget the question. Sorry, can you just say the two things again?
Rabbi Akiva says everything that God does is for the good, and Nachum Ish Gamzu says this too is for the good. So imagine let's put ourselves in
even if things, the one that you say this too is good, it's got to be the one that's good and bad is good. That's why it was changed, that it's not just everything. Like when Rabbi Akiva, the first one was just whatever it was you said, I can't remember now, but this too is good is maybe making a point that, like Hadassah said, good and bad, or what seems bad or wrong or challenging is also good. It's what we learn from and what we grow from, or we're supposed to try and learn and grow from, I think.
So I think saying, sorry, go on. He's saying that this too is for the good, even although he's really admitting, or he's really saying that it is bad, but I'm not enjoying it. It's not good, but it is for the good because Hashem's giving me it.
Right. So I think together with Hadassah and Sharon and Deborah, we've pieced something together, right? So that and I think Deborah really said that, is that Nachum is saying this is good, right? It's good. This is good. But as Sharon then said, what Rabbi Akiva is saying is, it looks terrible, right? I'm alone in the forest, and I've lost everything, and it's cold and it's dark, and I don't see a way out of it. But everything that God does is for the good. And so what? There's two different levels here, right? Rabbi Akiva is the level of faith, right? It feels horrible. It feels terrible, but I have faith that everything is for the good. But Nachum is a higher level. What is his level? Is a level of knowledge. He says, Gam zu l'tova, this too is for the good. This itself is good, right? This fact that I opened up the box in front of the king and it's mud, this is good. So what can be compared, right? Now imagine, I think a very powerful analogy is that imagine someone arrived at planet Earth, had never been at planet Earth before, and they come to a hospital and they see a woman who is giving birth, right? Can you imagine the thoughts that would be going through their mind? They think, oh my goodness, this woman, this is terrible. This woman is in terrible pain. The pain is getting worse. The only outcome of it is it looks like, unfortunately, the woman's going to pass away, right? Now, for someone who knows, they know that the pain of the labor is not only, is it, yes, it's painful, and yes, it's difficult, and it's not necessarily enjoyable, but they know that the pain is a good pain, because that pain is what is actually birthing the baby, right? That pain of the contractions is what's actually going to allow this new human life to come into the world, right? So if someone doesn't understand, but they're going on a tour, and they listen to the doctor, and the doctor says, "Don't worry, it's all going to be good." So they trust, and they say, "Okay, I don't know what's going on. I don't understand it at all, but I trust that you're a doctor, and I trust that you know what you're talking about, and you haven't, you've got your graduation and everything. So I trust that you know what you're saying when you're telling me that this woman is not in, it's not all doom and gloom. But for someone who knows about the birth process, they walk in and they don't have any of those questions, right? They walk in and they realize, you know, oh my goodness, right? This woman is in tremendous pain. That's great. That means that she's very close to having that child, right? They understand that it's not that the you know, the labor pains are difficult and you have to get through it, but that the pain is what is going to birth a baby, right? Like, which is why, you know, that when a woman is in giving birth, the doctors and the nurses and the midwives, whatever it is, they want to see the contractions getting more painful, because they understand that is what's going to bring this new life into this world. Now, if we go back to Joseph, right, what happens at that moment when Joseph says to them, he said, you have, I am Joseph. What goes through their mind at that moment? So I'll anyone wants to pipe in, or I'll just.
You go ahead.
All right, I'll go ahead. So, so what happens is that they're fearful, right? They think that Joseph maybe is going to, you know, get back at them, or that they're worried that once their father passes away, that Joseph will kill them in retribution. And what does Joseph say to them? He says two things. He says to them, "Don't worry, right? Don't worry. I'm going to look after you. I'm not going to harm you." But then he also says another thing, and he says to them, you thought to do me bad, but God meant it for the good, right? And what's he telling them is he's giving them two things. He's giving them like soothing words, right? Like, don't worry, I'm going to look after you. You don't have to feel bad. But he's also comforting them, right? Which is comfort is a bit of a higher level. Is he's telling them, you thought it was for the bad, but Hashem meant it for the good, right? Because had you not done what you did, I would not have gotten down to Egypt, right? Which doesn't excuse what the brothers did. That's a whole different thing. But what Joseph is teaching us is that it's not that you have to get through it and then it'll be good. Is that the process is good, right? The process is good because the process is what produces the result. Like if you think about it, from our right, and what that is what the hold on just a second. So if you think about it, like that is what the brothers understood when Joseph said, "I am Joseph," right? What was the big revelation is that they suddenly realized, hold on a second, we thought we were going through this tremendous difficulty with this Egyptian persecutor who was trying to persecute us and take our brother away. But what they realized in that moment, again, was that 180-degree flip of, oh my goodness, it's not that we went through that terrible thing and it's over and we're good and we're safe now, but that terrible thing was good. That itself was good, right? That's what Rabbi Akiva noticed, realized at the end, was that, you know, he had the faith in the beginning that this too, that everything that God does is going to be for the good. But then he realized that every step was good, right? It was good that the villagers didn't let him speak, because that's what enabled him to get saved. It was good that the candle blew out, right? That at that moment of afterwards, he realized that that the process itself was good. And I think, you know, we don't often very, very often we go through difficulties and we go through crises, we go through stress, and we in the moment we don't necessarily know how this is going to be, how this is going to be good. And I think this applies definitely for here. But at that moment, what we the choice that we have is to have that faith, that Rabbi Akiva taught us, that everything that God does is for the good, right? And sometimes we see it later on, right? Sometimes we see it you know, a few months down the line, a few years down the line, right? Like, especially when you look at your own life, and you look at you know, transformational events that you've had in your life, right? Sometimes, you know, you don't get the job, or you know, you don't, someone says no to you, you get rejected, or whatever it is, and at the time it feels devastating, but then you look back and you're like, wow, that was good, because then something better happened as a result of it. And sometimes we see that, and sometimes we don't necessarily see that in this world. And that's why we're told that the next world, there's a very interesting expression about the world to come, and it says that in the next world, the taste of the tree and the taste of the fruit are the same, right? So there's this idea that's taught that in the next world, like we have this world where you have a tree, and the tree is a pathway to get to grow the fruit, which we can then enjoy. But we're told in the next world that you can enjoy the tree and the fruit, right? They're both enjoyable. They're both for consumption. They're both for eating. And the deeper understanding behind that is that in this world, there's always two phases, right? There's process and there's result. And in this world, we see it as two separate phases, right? There's process and then there's result. But in the next world, we will understand that the process is good, right? The process is what brings to the result, but it's part of the end result. It's not just that we have the tree and you know, we need to have the tree to get to the fruit, but that the tree itself is good and is part of what it is part of that result. So I wanted to try and bring it back to what we're going through currently, and see if we can relate it at all. I'll share an idea, and then if anyone else wants anything to share, they're more than welcome to share. But you know, we're going through an unprecedented time, right? And I think you know, there's a lot going on, right? Well, I mean, obviously, one of the things that's going to come up is that we are going to be spending a lot more time away from other people, a lot more time with our immediate families, or if we have, or you know, there's going to be a lot of changes in a routine. And it's not for me to tell you what to do and what to take from it, but I think that it's obvious that there is something that we can take from it, and we're standing now at the beginning, and we can choose to either
sink or swim.
Hello, sorry. We're going to have to make a choice, right? And we're going to have to get through it. But we can either make this something that we got through, or we can make this, you know, something that made us better, right? And that when we get when we, please God, get on the other side, and hopefully it will be very, very fast, we can look back at it and say, you know what? It was transformational. Right? Whether it's learning to let God back into the picture, whether it's learning, you know, one of the things that has really struck me about it is that there's a lot of talk about how our lifestyle and our busyness and our constant go has really impacted the family. And what's this chosen, what's this forced us to do is to force us to stop all that busyness, right? Everything's cancelled, right? Schools are shutting down. After school programs are shutting down. Everything extracurricular is shutting down. The gyms, the pubs, whatever it is, right? And we're forced to go back and sort of really focus on what's important, and sometimes what's the hardest thing to do, right? So that's a different, you know, and again, it's the idea of the self-isolation. For a lot of people, why are they self-isolating? Why is the government to self-isolate before if anyone in the household has a symptom? It's because to force us to care about other people, right? It's not so much because of the people that, unless someone has someone vulnerable in the family, which is a different thing, but it's saying we have to, as a people and as a community, take precautions to protect those that are less vulnerable, which again is an incredible thing if you think about it. We're coming together as a community and as a world, really, to say we've got to look out for others, right? It's not just about me. It's not about whether it's comfortable for me to isolate right now or not. It's about I'm going to do this. I'm going to make sacrifices to protect others. So again, those are a few different avenues and ideas of how we can get through these times. We can realize that it's not just a question of getting through it, but the process itself can be good, and it can be something that we can use as an opportunity to do different, so that we can transform ourselves. If anyone has any other ideas or thoughts or takeaways, I'd love to hear from you.
I was thinking just that this morning, actually, Gila. I was thinking, obviously now the schools are going to be closed from tomorrow, and husband's working at home, and obviously I'll be at home, that we are literally, I mean, Baruch Hashem, we have houses that can hold us all, but it really will be a test of families, and maybe as you say, like a major opportunity for us to actually be together and spend quality time together, and learn to love and treat each other. I don't know, all those things. I was thinking, oh, we'll have to open the games cupboard and pull all the games out and start playing with each other. Like, it wasn't like Shabbos, just having quality time. And I did think that today. I was thinking to myself, it's going to be a really real test for everybody.
Yeah. Very, very, very true. Anyone else wants to share anything?
It gives us a chance also to be introspective and see what we, like I said earlier, what we need to do. Although we've got to think of other people, we've also got to start with ourselves and what we can do to help ourselves to help other people. I think it's a very clear message for so much that we can achieve. And we can achieve, we don't have to go outside. We don't have to, I mean, I work from home anyway, one of my jobs, and well, I don't want any clients now. Thank you very much. So I've just got to make do with what I can make do with, and yeah.
Yep. Thank you, Sharon.
Anybody else there? Apart from Deborah and I and Gil.
It's a lesson in humility.
Sorry?
It's a lesson in humility for me.
Yes. You want to elaborate a little bit? I can totally relate, but you want to elaborate for everyone else on the call?
Well, we're not in charge, and it's taken away a lot of our feelings of empowerment and all the things that make us feel, we're on it, we can do it, we make all these decisions, and it's taken that away, but in a good way as well. So, we know, what's in charge, what's important, and it's stripped away all the noise that we feel in our lives.
Right.
Yeah.
And being grateful, I think being grateful, I mean, we talk about technology and we talk about the bad sides of technology a lot of the time. But this is amazing. I mean, there you are driving away and we're watching you. I mean, it's just incredible. And for the people who are in isolation at the moment, to be able to have a phone and, the ones who have got FaceTime or Skype, and to be able to see their loved ones, to me, that is just absolutely such a blessing. So I mean, some ways we're hearing too much, but in other ways, it's good to be informed, and we're still connected, which is so amazing. And to have you giving us a share and being able to add our bits, I mean, words fail me. I just think it's amazing.
Gila, do you think it's like like, I mean, lots of things coming on like social media about Mashiach's on the way, you know, lots of stuff like that. Do you think this is like a final test, like humanity, to see like the people who will actually pull together before like Mashiach comes, like a real final test?
I don't know.
Because I mean, you know, it just feels like it is a massive test this now. You know, it's the biggest test we'll ever probably know.
Look, we do hope that it's we do hope that this is the final test, and we're not going to be tested any further. It's definitely, I don't know, but you know, but we're definitely being called on to do something different. I think in you know, I'm not obviously like God's personal secretary, but I think it's very clear that everyone understands that. Wow, right? Everyone stops and talking about this. Right? Everyone's, God has got all our attention, and to ask why it's happening, I don't know, but I think the productive question that we can all ask ourselves is, what can I learn from it, right? And my answer to that will be different to, maybe different to yours, and etc. But we can all do something different from it. And my hope and my prayer is that as a world, that we get through this quickly, right? The virus passes quickly, but we get through this and it changes us for the better, right? And we look back and we're like, wow, you know, this is that was a moment of transformation for me, for my family, for the world, in a positive way.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Thank
hello.
you.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. I don't know. I'm a bit nervous about all this. I don't know if I'm doing things correctly.
Yes,
thank
you
you.
are.
There's one thing I did want to say. I mean, quite a few points came up. I think in life we do have to know that we don't know, and that having the faith that ultimately things that we, you know, think are so important become less important, and to make us appreciate things that perhaps we're not appreciating. But I also think it's not too good to dwell on things. I think we need as much normality in our lives as possible. I think that, thank God, we're not being bombed. I mean, there's lots of things we can do still. We've got so much to be thankful for. And whilst it's good to analyse, I think that because we live in a world where we're bombarded with news 24/7 and everybody's online and everybody's picking up different things, it's almost fueling an anxiety which might not be called for. That's not to say we mustn't be careful. It's not to say we don't take natural precautions. But I think we have to have normality in our world as well. There are, you know, flu kills a lot of people. God forbid you can choke on a grape. I don't mean to minimize things, but I'm seeing an awful lot of anxiety around me and people not sleeping. And I think we have to get a sense of perspective. We're okay. You know, things happen in this world. We don't know why, what, how, or when. And if we only focus on the problems, that in itself creates the problem. And I just want to thank you anyway for all the people that have given their input and shared things with us. And I feel very nervous. Hope I'm not rambling on too much.
No, I think you raise a very important point, and I think it's you're right. Like sometimes the fear of what may or may not happen is worse than what actually, you know, will happen, right? Like, and I think part of that is understanding that when we understand that there is a God and God has a plan, and there's a plan for all this, and you know, God knows, right, that God wants us for the good. We can do our due diligence, because obviously we have to, right? That's the way God set up the world, is we have to do our due diligence, we have to take precautions, we have to look out for other people. But at the same time, as you're saying, is you know, as the famous phrase goes, let go and let God, right? We do our part, and the rest is let go and let God. And at the same time, and seeing what positives can I take from it. and what can I do?
Yeah. Can you see me, by the way? I can't.
No, I can't. If you want to think, if you click on the screen, it says next to the mute button, it says video.
Oh, it's probably better if you don't see it, but I was just curious.
Oh, no.
I'd like to see you.
I will have to get. Okay, wait a minute. It's not coming on. Oh, I don't know what it's. Oh, I'm
We're
just.
seeing you driving.
I'm not driving. No. Anyway, I'll have to get. It does say. It says I've got to go onto settings, camera and privacy, but I won't go into all that. Someone else can sort that out. Thank you
for sharing that. Yes.
You
All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining today. And if anyone has any questions, any thoughts, any things, feel free, or anything, and need anything, please feel free to be in touch. I know I speak on behalf of all of us at Seed. We are here for you, and if we can do anything, we will endeavor to do that.
And bring Shabbos in 18 minutes earlier.
God, we will try to.
We'll try. Yeah. Thank you.
We did it a few weeks ago, so we can do it. Bye.
Bye. Thank you. That is
Bye.
true.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
I really appreciate that.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Gila. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, Deborah.